Access to justice isn't just a consumer right, it's also one of the statutory objectives for the Legal Services Board. And one of the things which we do at the Legal Services Consumer Panel is constantly remind the Legal Services Board that it's one of their key objectives. According to the latest Individual Legal Needs Survey, 32% of people who have a legal issue are not getting it resolved. And particularly people with a disability, women, and people on a low income or living in deprived areas are suffering even more. The number one reason for unmet legal need is people not being able to access professional health. The number of law centres and providers is declining. Sources of free advice and legal representation, that sector is also facing existential challenges. People who want to use legal services but not able to for a variety of reasons, including that they don't realise their problem is a legal issue, so it's an unrecognised legal need as well as an unmet legal need. And then they don't know where to get help or can't afford it, or they don't get adequate assistance. Nearly 9 in 10 people believe that law it's a kind of game in which the skillful and the resourceful are more likely to get what they want, and so they themselves will be at a disadvantage. We all want a level playing field, but not everyone can access it without the help that they need. And the consequence of not having that help can result in completely life-changing events. Losing a job, losing a home, kids not getting the education that they need. That's only just a subset of the things that arise as a result of lack of access to justice. The Legal Services Consumer Panel recognised that even we, the panel, were not doing everything that we could to improve access to justice. And so that's why we commissioned this very important piece of research. The result is a soon-to-be-published report, which is a call to action to all those who are involved, so the Legal Services Board and the legal services regulators, to take part in creating that level playing field. And the important bit about this is actually trying to think outside the box, because just doing what we have been doing is not going to be enough, and working with all of you. And we hope that the LSB can lead the way by improving access to justice within the legal services regulation world with bold leadership, with fresh thinking, and above all, and coming back to one of the themes that Dean referenced earlier on this morning, to collaboration. Now, the report itself, the Regulatory Leadership on Access to Justice, the report will be launched on April the 1st. And if you'd like to be invited to that launch, please leave your name at the Legal Services Consumer Panel desk or exhibitor stand outside. And so, without any further ado, I'm now going to welcome Dr. Liz Curran, who's been the lead researcher on the report and is Associate Professor at Nottingham Law School. Liz, over to you.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome, everybody. What a wonderful, once-in-a-5-decade opportunity we have with this report to make a difference, for the regulators to take a lead, to encourage collaboration, sharing best practice, because it has levers and creative opportunities to make a difference and make inroads into access to justice. This report is a repository of multiple and many ideas. So, if I could have the slides up, sorry. Slides? Thank you. So, this research report and encouragement for action is entitled The Regulatory Leadership on Access to Justice, as Tom has just explained. Right, let's go back to our international obligations, highly topical at the moment. The overarching question that we were asked to answer was, how can regulators be more creative in using their powers, levers and influence to find multiple and creative solutions to the problem of unmet legal needs as it relates to access to justice? So that was the question we were asked to answer. Given that improving to access is a statutory obligation under the Legal Services Act 2007, Section 1, which sets out the statutory obligations, first is protecting and promoting the public interest. Second, B, is supporting the constitutional rule of law. And I remind everybody in the room about a fundamental underpinning of that is equality before the law. And C, improving access to justice. So all the regulators in England and Wales have a statutory obligation to improve access to justice. So my research team, so we're on the third slide now if possible. My research team, there's me and Professors Jane Jarman and Jane Ching, both of them with expertise in the regulatory area. My area of expertise is access to justice. Thank you. I'm not quite sure what to do with this, but hopefully whatever it is, it's working. Okay, so the methodology, we had 3 months to conduct the research, so it was a tight timeline. It was empirical research. We interviewed frontline regulators in the UK. We did a quick literature review on regulators around the world who've actually taken action and made steps on access to justice. So we interviewed Australia and Canada. We also interviewed frontline service delivery agencies, particularly their peak bodies, about their experiences of access to justice and what the regulator could do. We also did a literature review, and it all culminated with a data report which we shared at a reflective practice conversation with the Legal Services Board, the Consumer Panel and an invitee from the SRA. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Back to the international sphere. We now have a direction from the UN Development Group and from the UN to ensure, going back to Dean's point, people-centred justice, addressing people's everyday justice and needs. This is about improving the lives of all members of society through access to effective and efficient dispute resolution mechanisms, legal protection of human rights, and the ability for all people to live in safety and security. It starts from people understanding, then from us as lawyers understanding people's needs, their experiences, their expectations, and a people-centred approach, i.e. the client is the centre, not what we think they need. And it's about delivering justice and security services for all. So that's a directive from the OECD and the UN, and there's 5 pillars attached to that that gives us concrete examples of what we need to do, and they should underpin our approach. Next slide, please. Key points. So we need the regulatory environment led by the LSB, we argue, and supported by the Consumer Panel, is we need to be bold. We need to be creative and facilitate innovation, and the Legal Service Board can be a convener of that facilitation of best practice and research that provides the evidence base. We need to be deliberate and intentional, and that's a problem that we have not had for the last 5 decades. We need to make access to justice underpin almost everything we do, because the problem is too important. 3.8 million people in England and Wales are missing out, according to the recent ELSB data. We need to take action. We need to take calculated risks. There are so many different things in the report that we flag could be done and have been done elsewhere. So let's get over the reasons why not. And I was here last year and so many people were giving all the reasons why not. Let's go into a mindset of what's possible and what we can do to make a change, because people's lives are being harmed by inaction, by inability to get access to legal services, by poor funding. What are the levers we can find to increase funding? The government is not going to put any more money in, so what can the regulators do to facilitate access to justice services? Let's generate culture change. Again, that growth mindset. Instead of finding the problems, let's work together to find the solutions. Let's find out what each other's doing and say, what are the regulatory barriers? How can we do this differently? And talk to the regulators. How can you facilitate my access to justice work? What would help me in my access to justice work? And then the regulator, with their new mindset, will go away and have a think about it. And then we can collaborate. Okay. And also, of course, having an outcome plan. We actually need to measure our progress. And that includes a consumer panel, and that includes the LSB, but all regulators, and if not, every one of us. How are we changing and improving access to justice for community? And the research can inform that as well. What progress are we making? Evaluation of programs as to their effectiveness and sharing that best practice. Next slide, please. Okay, so access to justice is not just about legal aid. It is about equality for everyone before the law, and it underpins a democracy. The legislatures, the parliaments pass lots and lots of laws, and most of us don't understand them. And if you don't have an education, or you come from a disadvantaged background or a different country, you're against the odds. So it's about equality before the law. Everybody having access to their remedies, their protections, and adherence to the law, and holding authority to account. Regulators all have a role in access to justice, but it's not just about legal regulators. There are opportunities at cross-sectoral intervention, and the report talks about that. So, for example, in the finance sector, the financial regulator has developed consumer duty, and it's an embedded concept now. 10 years ago, it was thought that consumer duty would never see the light of day, and now it's a statutory obligation that runs through everything. Change can happen with deliberate, intentional action and thinking and strategic planning and passion and excitement. We can all do our little bit for access to justice. So let's, as I said, let's move beyond what's not possible to what's possible. For example, interest on lawyers' trust accounts could generate lots of income for access to justice. That can be wisely invested. It's been done abroad effectively with lots of money for access to justice innovations by the regulator. We can look at grants. We can look at paramount duties. Duty to the public interest, duty to the rule of law, improving access to justice, rather than the often reductionist approach that lawyers have, which is just focusing on one statutory obligation, namely best interests of the client. And we saw what can happen if in the sub-postmaster's dilemma to the rest of the justice system if we get that out of whack. Right, so cultural shift is needed, and it can happen. 30 years ago in Australia, we were very, very in a similar space, but with intentional action by the regulator, creating a whole range of different levers and being creative and facilitating conversations, and all different parts of the sector coming together, not just the legal sector, but other sectors, the health sector, the financial sector. Inroads were made in an environment where there was no public funding for access to justice. So the role of the regulator and the role of the professional associations and each member of the professional association, i.e. individuals, is key. So, final slide 2. The key points in the report, next slide, sorry. There are a whole lot of barriers to early advice. We cite them in the report, but this report is about solutions. It's not about, we know the problem, it's about finding the solutions. Role of trusted intermediaries, role of paralegals, no longer homogenous approaches to regulation. So there are a lot of access to justice bodies out there being currently regulated as if they were commercial entities and having to comply with all the things. They're doing safe practice, they don't run trust accounts, so maybe there needs to be a different form of regulation that's still effective and makes sure they're on track but doesn't hinder or stifle or freeze out opportunities for improving access to justice. What are the barriers? What are the regulatory barriers that could be released for access to justice work? Integrated legal practice. We've got a great man in the room I met earlier, Dan, who's working with Health Justice Partnerships, as is Emma Bates from Central England. What about integrated practices? How can we release some regulatory inhibitors for people getting the help they need in one place so they don't get re-traumatised? Most people don't know what a legal problem is. How can we train professionals to identify them? There's lots in the report. So I commend it to you on the 1st of April. I've got a little bit of 1 minute. Okay, that's what we need. I want you to turn to the person next to you or in front or behind you and answer this question in less than 1 minute. What more can you do to address access to justice? Oh, there's a challenge.